I'm Ed Gallagher. I'm president of the American Scandinavian Foundation, and I'm very happy to welcome you to our headquarters, Scandinavia House, the Nordic Center in America, for this should be a very, very interesting program entitled Designing with Nature. And it's a panel that is presented by Blue Lagoon in association with several other groups, and it's exploring the role of design, or the functions of design within sort of the context of disaster, which is something we can all relate to, I think, these days. So I'm looking forward to that very, very much. ASF, for those of you who don't know it, the American Scandinavian Foundation was founded 115 years ago here in New York to foster understanding and exchange between the Nordic countries and the U.S. And we have been doing this for now 115 years. Scandinavia House, our headquarters, opened up as a center for exchange among the Nordics and the U.S. 24 years ago. We'll celebrate our 25th anniversary next year. Very happy to have you all here with us, and I'm particularly happy to welcome Lilja Alfredsdottir, who is the Minister of Culture and Business Affairs at Iceland, and she will be opening the proceedings. Lilja?
So, dear guests, it's a great pleasure to be with you here today. I think this panel is extremely exciting, where we are talking about design and architecture, and basically how we have been approaching design in the last few years in Iceland. We've been placing a much greater emphasis on it because I think I think all of you that are here realize, the potential that design thinking has. And so what we've been doing for the last few years in Iceland is that we're working towards a concept that is a holistic approach to the creative Iceland. And the creative Iceland has film, music, visual arts, stage performing arts, and everything that is in the creative industry. But we placed a special emphasis on design and architecture, and we just finished this last year, Halla? So last year, policy on design until the year 2030. And we do this because we think it's very important that the government with the industry signals what we expect from the industry and what are the potentials that the industry can basically provide to Iceland, and how it can actually enlarge the country with the design thinking. And the topic here today, which is one of my favorite places in Iceland, which is the Blue Lagoon. And one of the main reasons for it is maybe not bathing in it, to be honest, which is though fantastic. But what is so spectacular is the architecture around it, and which gives you a completely new perspective of the experience, meaning that because it's designed in such a, at least, cool way, it's like even, if it's raining and winding, a lot of wind, you really enjoy being there because there's always something new that is presented the way that the whole thing is designed. And one of my dreams is that we will see further emphasis, and that we're going to use design thinking in almost, everything that we do. And I don't know if you know of it, but we've had some fissure eruptions around the Blue Lagoon. Yeah, so you know about that. Okay, so you can just imagine, what a challenge it has been for the company to be there, and always knowing that, another eruption is about to come. We've already had like 7, but they've been open probably around, I would think, like 90% of the whole time, even more. And it's my assessment, one of the reasons for how resilient and smart they are is because I think they use design thinking a lot. I mean, they're just completely, it's unbelievable to see. You know, it only takes them like 30 minutes to evacuate. And even the people that are in the evacuation, they think this is exciting because what you see, you know, when you're being, you know, going from the Blue Lagoon, you will see, you know, a fissure, you will see eruption. Basically the earth, you know, coming from the ground. And that is, most, you know, for most people, except our Icelanders, that's a unique experience. And one of the things that we're hoping is that we can use this, you know, unbelievable creation of Earth also in an orderly fashion, and we can, you know, allow our guests to see, in a safe manner, of course, what's happening, because it's a part of Earth history. So I think that because our design is such a strong part of the Blue Lagoon, it's successful. And I can also tell you, from a practical point of view, is that 60% of everyone that wants to visit Iceland, they Google the Blue Lagoon. So if the Blue Lagoon is closed, that means that person or that couple or family will probably decide to wait with their visit to Iceland. So you suddenly have a company based on design that is of systemic importance for our economy. Because tourism generates 35% of all our export revenues and is about 9% of GDP. So it is pretty amazing, at least I think so. So I used to study economics here at Columbia, so I love connecting all kinds of things. I hope I'm not boring you. But it nevertheless shows the importance of companies that base their, basically the whole thing on fantastic design. Well, we're here, and I got the, I'm very honored to be able to announce today the selection of Iceland's pavilion that is going to be at the next Biennale. And it's based, of course, on what I've been talking about, the lava forming. SP architects are going to be representing us, and it's going to be Arnhildur Pálmadóttir, and I'm very proud that she's going to be there and that she's focusing on the lava forming that I was just mentioning. And I think it's going to be completely unique for us to have that being our representatives. But I think, Halla, somebody's going to talk more about that. Mm-hmm. Okay, good. So you don't want to leave that to the politicians, even though they're very excited about the whole thing. So no, this afternoon is going to be very interesting. I think you're going to get a new perspective on a lot of things. And you can just see how important it is for us that things are done in a proper way. It's not just economically important, but it's also the way that we want to approach our guests, that they experience something unique, and it's done by design thinking. And before I end, I want to, thank the Center of Design in Iceland, Höllu Helgadóttur and her team, and Business Iceland for organizing this. And it has been, a tremendous pleasure from the government side to work with such special people. So thank you, and please enjoy the day.
Thank you very much, Minister, for your kind words. And I'm really pleased to see all of you here. It's a very special event for us. And to be able to bring a dialogue like this to New York is very exciting. So my name is Halla Helgadóttir, and I'm the Managing Director of Iceland Design and Architecture. That is a platform that is directly owned by designers and architects in Iceland, but it's supported by government. So our aim is to work on further progress in design and architecture in Iceland, focusing on sustainability. And our role is to facilitate between designers and companies, making like design and architecture more important culturally, socially, and business-wise. So now we're here talking about designing with nature, and this symposium is held by the Blue Lagoon and us together. The Blue Lagoon was founded in 1992 and has evolved into this great company encompassing transformative spa experiences, research and development, sustainability, and the converge of hospitality and wellness, as they say on their page. So our event focuses on putting the dialogue about strategic design thinking and emergency design into the agenda. We are going to share knowledge about the important role that design can play in times of change that we're all facing now. As we're talking about volcanic eruptions, we Icelanders, we've always lived in very strong connection with natural forces. Few people in a big country with harsh weather conditions, dark winters, and short summers. Hot springs, glaciers, and active volcanoes. And I think it's important that from a very young age, we all learn to respect nature and sort of realize how small we are in that context. And which makes us maybe a bit humble and respectful towards the natural forces we live so close in. We also learn not to be afraid, as we have great scientists and knowledge about what to expect from the nature forces we live in. So I think we can, we see that in the talks that we're gonna listen to. But what's the role of design when responding to natural disasters or unforeseen circumstances? We have now gathered experts in different fields that will share their vision, knowledge, experience, and ideas about how we can use design in challenging circumstances, because we're more used to thinking about design aesthetically as something nice to have, but design is a strong tool for innovation. We can use it. Of course, aesthetics are very important, and nature is the biggest aesthetic operation we have, and we need to defend nature as well. So here we have these questions. Can we design our way through natural disasters? How can we design when the sequence of events is unpredictable? And can we use experience and knowledge in a multidisciplinary way in order to respond to challenges from nature? So, but I'm not gonna say more now, even though I like to talk. So I want to welcome Sigurður Þorsteinsson, Head of Brand, Marketing and Design Solutions at the Blue Lagoon, about designing in an ever-changing landscape. Siggi is in the forefront in Iceland in using design and design thinking in business development and innovation. And there, I want to mention, the Blue Lagoon and their facilities have been designed in collaboration with Basalt Architects, which is one of Iceland's most prominent architectural firms. So welcome, Siggi. The floor is yours.
I'm just basically involved in a lot of different things that normally, especially, let's say, 97, 2000, would not have been considered normal. It's involving in operation. We are basically getting a little piece of everything and, engaging with the whole structure of it. So for those of you, I will go quickly over what is Blue Lagoon. And Blue Lagoon, well, it's, I didn't put the classical photo of people bathing there because I think this is the jewel. This is the retreat hotel. We opened in 2018, a luxury hotel, extremely successful and kind of changed a little bit the landscape of tourism in Iceland. It moved the whole sector a bit up. We have been getting different type of tourism after this opening. But Blue Lagoon is a part of that, is also one of the 25 wonders of the world, and that is was something that National Geographic defined in 2012. I'm kind of happy about this slide because there are very different let's say, forces that are saying Blue Lagoon is hip and cool. I mean, I think when iPhone launched their first really good phone with photos, they used a lot of imagery from Blue Lagoon. And when Simpson puts you in the scene, it's like, that's good. All the celebrities, these are just some of them, there are much more. And then you have National Geographic saying we are cool as well. I think that's pretty good, actually. I'm quite happy about it. But it's a long story. And a lot of people don't realize how humble the beginning was. In '92, people bathing in the lagoon, which was a wastewater coming from the geothermal energy plant, it was basically psoriasis, people with psoriasis or other skin ailments, drunken Icelanders over weekends, and quite a lot of Americans from the NATO base, which was not far away. So it was kind of a strange combination of healing and jacuzzi. Kind of strange. But today, this is a luxury destination. And on that travel, I think Blue Lagoon, we haven't counted it lately, but the different awards from design, travel sector, lighting design, there are probably somewhere around 50, 60 of them for different parts. Even the concrete awards of Iceland, which I was pretty proud of. And but Blue Lagoon, we are now talking, and as Lilia mentioned, the eruption. It's very simple. There would not be any Blue Lagoon if there would not be magma, if there would not be eruptions or volcanoes. I mean, Blue Lagoon, and the reason comes there, the reason there's a geothermal energy plant, is that there's a hot water taken up from around 2,000 meters deep. It's around 250 degrees hot Celsius. It's pretty hot. It generates electricity through the turbines. It then runs through the heat exchanger for generating hot water to heat the whole peninsula. In fact, in one of the eruptions this winter, when the lava went over both the electric lines and the tubes for the hot water, over 30,000 people was left 3 days without hot water and electricity. So it's a strategic important place. And Blue Lagoon is basically a byproduct of that. And I think we have done a great job of changing this byproduct into something unique. And design has been a fundamental aspect of doing that. The beginning of, let's say, the design journey is in '99, when the geothermal plant said, guys, close this lagoon because we need that space for another plant. Okay, so the option was close or move. And we went through a lot of thinking with engineers and the architects, and basically found that way how to move the water, and we had the opportunity to design the experience from scratch. That's not very common that you can actually do that. So the parking, the pathway that you have to walk through, all these kind of things. I'll tell you a little bit more about it later. And during this whole process, we have been very, very, very careful about never dig more than we need, play the building very well into it, and kind of tailoring the land or the building around that. And you can see it very well in this aerial photography. Basically, we are not taking more of the moss than we desperately need for building it, and then we like hiding our footwork with hot water after that, which is, we have this luck that's blue, very nice color, by the way. And so it's very built into nature. We are always trying to, get and enhance the experience, but at the same time, not damage more than needed. Other element is crucial. We have taken lava, cut it into bricks, the lava that is from the ground that we were breaking. Use that. Detailing has been important. I mean, we have been basically kind of obsessed of designing the detailing and the experience and what happens and the process and the journey. Yeah, I mean, it's basically been detailed a lot, but I was not supposed to talk about that today, so sorry, I got a little bit, I'm a designer in the end, so. Nice, this is actually a cut section of the lava, which is creating the pattern that the light goes through, a very nice experience. And this is the retreat rooms, which are, again, sitting a little bit below the surface, so the feeling of the water and how the lava flows into the building is quite unique. This 30-plus year traveling of journey of a company has created a category. Now there are many more. They are, let's say, the hot lagoons of Iceland. There are quite many, actually, and they are growing. And every now and then you see articles about hot lagoons of Iceland. And I think it all started with one little wastewater place in Reykjanes Peninsula. And this has been a very successful journey. But then, well, we came from the magma, the hot, and when you live close to, it's a good friend and it's a bad friend. And it's, I think, Halla, you mentioned it. In Iceland, we learn to respect nature. I mean, we never take it for granted, and we are always aware that it's bigger than you. It gives you and it takes. So in the past, the eruptions around that area has been so-called tourist attractions because they have been conveniently located far away from infrastructure and basically worked very well on that. So in 18th of December, we got another eruption, which was actually very, very close to an infrastructure. Very close to both the geothermal energy plant, so vital, close to Blue Lagoon and close to the town of Grindavik. And there had been plans and thinking from protection civil authorities how to react on that. And they thought about the protection wall, to build a protection wall around that area where the energy plant was. That was the first aim. Secondary aim was, let's say, Blue Lagoon. But it's a huge piece. And in this piece, we had started a dialogue because the first walls were not necessarily placed exactly where we would like to have placed them, either through the parking or very, very close to basically through our very expensive Blue Lagoon suite, which costs like $30,000 a night. And we would have had a beautiful view of a wall, which could have been nice. But we negotiated, we discussed, and in came a position, and we understood also the limits and why they need the protective wall. And it was just as good, because on 8th of February, there was another eruption. And you see this incredible flow of lava, very thin, goes very fast and very far. That's not normal, and very close. So after that took a period where we have basically been making roads over lava, and then the lava goes over the road. Then we make a road again, the lava goes again over the road, and then repeats n times. And the last eruption actually made it so that this road is not anymore, but there's another road. There's always a solution, and I think this is what Lily was saying before. If you have an open mind and you think about designing, I mean, you can engage with nature, and there's always more solution than you would think in the first place. So this is the extension of the lava today. These are 6, well, you can say 7 different moments and eruptions. And it's actually very big, and it have gone through, very close to a lot of the protection walls. Blue Lagoon has gone through, since the event started the 9th of November, we have gone through, we have been closed a little bit more, Lilia, than, it's 108 days. But we have been open, especially the days in the beginning, we were not allowed because people were uncertain about. Now we have seen, as it progresses, we open almost immediately after eruption. As soon as things have been clear, is it safe or not safe? And we have been, I mean, the average time of evacuating is 32 minutes up to 42 minutes, and maybe there are 1,300 people on the premises, maybe in the lagoon, and we have to get them out into a bus, and out it goes. I could actually go, there's a lot of interesting stories about this whole operation, but that was not the theme. So we should have made more of those events, no? Halla, more. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit. We were planning last year when everything started, we had decided to make a new welcome house. So how could we receive our guests and basically get them through the building and then into the path they can walk on and then into our spa. Well, where this building was planned, there is now a wall. And so mid-November, we were just saying, okay, this is going to be the positioning. What are we going to do? So we started thinking, should we build a building under the wall and have a tunnel going through? And what should be in the building? So we started sketching, could it be something in or not? This is how it looked. You see this beautiful parking place, and then from there, there's a path. You see the dark line? they're like 400 meters so that everyone has to walk. You cannot park your car in front of Blue Lagoon. You have to walk this 400 meters. Rain or snow, doesn't matter. That's a part of the experience. It kind of changed. Today it looks like this. It's impressive, it's a scale. I mean, the wall is big, and the roads are in different places. And here we have, the new road from July. You see that external to the walls. The original main road, 4 layers of lava, which is original road to Blue Lagoon is also secondary. But at the same time, we have been operating all the time. And this summer, I mean, business has been very good. And we have been managing, because we have almost 900 people on our payroll. So it's also a responsibility not only towards the tourism as so, but also towards, we haven't laid off one person. And it's been a tough task. So, but you understand the scale. It's big. It's actually huge. It goes through roughly our entrance. We decided to place the house. Then we have been in a very nice dialogue back and forth, because are we going to, oh, no, there might be eruption there. Oh, should we have no, we have to design it so we can twist it at 90 degrees, because if there is eruption from the other side, we will have to move the parking inside of the protective walls. So the building is designed in a way that we can swap all the functions in 90 degrees and receive people differently. And so what the intention was last year, Welcome House, is actually Welcome Tunnel now. One tunnel in, and then beneath the wall we will have the new Welcome House, and out, and also all the food and all the supplies. So it has recalled a new master plan, and this is once again a flow dialogue with the authorities, escape routes, how are we going to do it. I mean, it's a lot of depth and complexity here, and those of you who have been dealing with planning, you understand it's not you just do it like that. But I personally believe that the arrival is going to be very nice. It's different from the past. It's very dramatic. Then once you go through there, you go through the path, you will have the experience from there on the same. You go through the path there, you will be leaving it at the same. So in a way, because we have a very strong design intent from the beginning, we kind of could react it very quickly on things, because we knew roughly what we wanted about. And this brings me to, I'm almost finished, that today, there's always more and more of our problems are dynamic. And this is our tools of development, our tools of solving problems are not very good at that. We are typically, with due respect from NASA, but it's kind of, take the elephant by eating it in bites. That's the kind of the logic, take it and break it down. And that may work, but if the elephant, while you are taking it down to little bites you can deal with, is changing all the time, from elephant to a zebra to giraffe to a bird, you are going to have a problem. So we need new tools, we need new approaches to deal with our complex dynamic problems today. I personally, I'm a designer, so I'm obviously biased, but I think that if you have a design intention or intent, it's much stronger than have a plan. Plan boxes things in, plan is difficult to change, so it doesn't react very well to the dynamic problem. And then you have all the different external factors. It can be economy, it can be human, it can be nature, it doesn't really matter. And if you have an intent, as in our Kitchen Blue, we have our intent, we know what we want to do, it's like a compass. It helps so much with the decision making. So, yeah, so that's the end of it. Thanks.
Thank you, Siggy. This was very inspiring and a lot of food for thought here now for us, the others. But next we will have Robert Kirkbridge, Professor of Architecture and Product Design, and Yvette Chaparro, Assistant Professor of Product and Industrial Design at Parsons School of Design, the new school. Speaking about creating design solutions for natural disasters. So now we have been with Siggy in sort of the harsh reality of what is happening in Iceland right now. Maybe not so harsh, I don't know. we are trying to approach this in a very positive manner, and I think the Blue Lagoon is succeeding there. But we're very happy to have found Robert and Yvette, who are, I think, are a perfect fit to our dialogue here. We really wanted to connect with some great local people, and because bringing the dialogue here it shouldn't be just about us, it should be about the bigger picture. And we were so happy that you were willing to be here with us. So I welcome you to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hedla. Also, thank you, Siggi, for the context. It's extremely helpful. And I'd also like to thank Iceland Design and Architecture and DesignMarch for the opportunity to discuss our experiences with designing and the complexities that Siggi spoke to about designing for disaster. And we've been doing this at Parsons School of Constructed Environments for about the past 15 years. So we've learned a number of things about these complexities. Whether caused by natural forces, human actions, or both combined, disasters challenge our resilience and our humanity. Since 2009, Parsons SCE has explored disaster scenarios to reimagine how design and creativity can help us think differently to better prepare for catastrophe and its repercussions. How practices such as upstreaming equip us to redesign global supply networks and redistribute knowledge and resource flows. How we can gather and design data to better inform ourselves and others about the types of disasters, their geographical distribution and concentrations. As you can see in the slide here, there's a variety of types of severe catastrophe that occur globally, some of them that overlap. And in the map at the lower right, you see how some of those disasters coalesce and concentrate in similar or the same geographic locations around the world. Also, how do we use that data? How do we design that data to form new questions that are less obvious to the eye? When you look at the chart on the left, it seems, of course, that we have many, many more intensive disasters now than we did 100 years ago. And yet that's not exactly the right question, because we also have far more adept data gathering techniques and reportage. So you always have to look with a critical eye at the data that you're gathering and ask other kinds of questions. In the map on the right side, which shows the numbers of people affected by disasters with population growth in mind, and it looks very intensive in specific bands of the world, the unasked question in this map is the impacts of what happens when you have decreases in population in various parts of the world. How much of the dramatic increase in disasters reflect that improved reportage of some parts of the zones of the world, and yet population decrease erodes the capacity to create and sustain social and physical infrastructures in places like Japan and other parts of the world. Through school-wide design intensives and courses, international project partnerships, and academic exchanges, Parsons SCE students in architecture, in industrial design, interior design, and lighting design have created proposals that seek to better integrate global strategies with regional and local tactics, which is an incredibly big part of the puzzle. And we are bringing the broader view to some of the specific contextual concerns that Siggi was raising. During my deanship at SCE, we pursued a multi-year collaboration with the Japan Foundation and the Earth Manual Project, which is a traveling exhibit of disaster preparation proposals accumulated from various Pacific Rim communities who have experienced catastrophes of earthquakes, tsunamis, cyclones, and volcanoes. You can see in the map on the right side, there are 10,000 earthquakes per year in Japan, which is at the crosshairs of multiple tectonic plates. Those also, therefore, bring tsunamis and other extenuating disasters that are related. Parsons was the first North American contributor. Our disasters in North America tend to be, but are not limited to, storm-based catastrophe. Since Hurricane Sandy was still fresh in our memories, many of our proposals during these intensives centered on designing for coastal resilience. We learned from our collaborator, Hirokazu Nagata, at bottom right, that the true experts are the survivors themselves. And one of the most important tools for a designer is to grow bigger ears, to listen to the communities who experience the disasters. We explored how design and storytelling can help us reconsider social infrastructures. We learned from Hurricane Katrina in 2005 that you don't evacuate people if you don't evacuate their pets, especially in less wealthy neighborhoods whose residents are often a bit less independently mobile. At Wright, a group of our lighting design students absorbed lessons about decentralized energy grids from Marvel Architects and worked with communities in Puerto Rico during the extended blackouts after Hurricane Maria in 2017. Rather than creating ready-made products, we learned the significance of DIY design using humble and readily available materials, like lava, and designing clear step-by-step instructions. We gathered these lessons, plans, and proposals into a field manual, and we exhibited the projects in our Fifth Avenue gallery, which Yvette curated and installed in one of her first activities as a full-time faculty at Parsons. Many student proposals promoted a circular economy by reusing waste materials for common sense solutions. We shared our work with the United Nations for World Tsunami Awareness Day in 2019, and a number of our projects became part of the Earth Manual project, traveling to Kobe, Japan in January 2020 for the 25th anniversary of the devastating Great Hanshin earthquake. Our experiences highlighted 3 habit-changing design imperatives that we'll share. First, decentralize design research, shifting from top-down, quote-unquote, authorities and specialists toward distributed knowledge flows that valorize the expertise of disaster survivors. Second, decentralize global production from an outmoded and unsustainable carbon-intensive colonial model shown at upper left toward a distributed network, image at lower left, that is more nimble and responsive to regional and local know-how, resources, and also time-based necessity. Third, decentralize design itself from an object-centered, resource-depleting profession toward community-centered processes that anticipate disasters and their ripple effects, incorporating regenerative practices into our everyday experiences and behaviors. In spring 2020, we launched a new elective course on disaster preparedness, and we also began an exchange with Chiba University in Japan. In February 2020, students from Chiba visited with us to brainstorm disaster scenarios with our students. Little did we anticipate the disastrous pandemic awaiting just a few weeks ahead. Our students had to wait for their chance to visit Japan, and that is where I hand the baton to my colleague, Yvette Chaparro.
Thank you, Robert. Taking over from Robert, these are the students that made it to Chiba, Japan after the pandemic. And they went to work with different students from different universities in Japan in groups. They were tackling mostly disasters that affect Japan normally, like typhoons, flooding and tsunamis, and earthquakes. This is a quick overview of the different projects, and I'm going to start by this one. You see an image of a gymnasium at a school. They use cardboard and they create these semi-private spaces for people to take refuge in. The students proposed a system of furniture that could be used in a normal day at the school by the students, and if there ever was the need, they could manipulate the furniture to build space dividers and create the semi-spaces needed. In this proposal, materials would not have to be stored somewhere separately or shipped in when the need arose. This other group was working with typhoons and flooding, and they looked at an object that they use normally in Japan, which is the umbrella. They added certain functionality to it that would not disrupt the normal use of the object, but it had certain tools that could be used when needed. They added a measuring band to tell you how deep it could be when it was flooded, so to avoid accidents. They added a light if there was a brownout, and they added a whistle in case you needed to be found. This group was working with earthquakes, and they observed existing behavior by grandparents. They're used to wearing helmets during these events. And by learning from their experience, as Robert was saying, considering them the experts on this, they proposed an object that could be used in the house, a lamp, that could be repurposed as a helmet whenever it was needed. This other group was researching typhoon flooding. This group found that the process of safeguarding infrastructure could be difficult and inefficient. They found an existing system, which is an L-shaped blocking system that stops water due to the water itself, the weight of the water. In order to incorporate this system, the students proposed a piece of furniture that could live in the home and be disassembled in a case of flooding and emergencies. As Robert mentioned, in the spring of 2020, we created an elective class at Parsons. It is open to all Parsons students and has been a place for different disciplines to come together while asking questions about how we work, how we can apply the process of design to be prepared to either react, mitigate, or avoid disasters altogether. The class was divided into 3 basic areas of focus. Personal, how ready am I and my family for a disaster? Local, how should we think about the community around us, and how do we include them in the planning and the usage of the plan to protect all of us? And global, how can we share what we know with others, learn from each other, and create local systems based on our universal know-how? This image shows how they start. They start looking at what they have and what they think could be the definition of a disaster. What do I need to survive when something affects me? As students learn from past workshops and events at Parsons, from Chiba University, and other case studies around the world, they are encouraged to define what a disaster is in different ways, allowing for a more broader understanding. I will show you a couple of examples of proposals by students taking this elective that move that understanding of what a disaster is in a broader way. This group framed their inquiry around the disaster of food waste in our daily practices. They found the household kitchen as the place where the awareness of food waste has the most potential of reaching more people. They created an educational website and app with information about cooking and what can be done with food waste. The database would be open for contributions from other users and everyday people. Another group used the example of the decline in the pollinator population as a disaster. They focused on bees specifically. They proposed a multi-layered educational effort starting from a physical park where families could visit and learn about bees, interact with bees contexts, and they created activities to make them go around the city, doing different things, looking for different places as they were learning about bees. They could access this information through an app, and the app could constantly be changing to incorporate other topics and for example, other insects. The last project I will talk about is the Buddy Brigade. This group of students found that a disaster we are actually living in right now is forgetting our stories as a society. How do we learn from others? Our students created a system for young volunteers to interact and perhaps spend an afternoon with aging individuals that wanted to tell their stories, having them preserved, passing down knowledge to a new generation. Through this presentation, we have shown you what we have learned from a multi-year and multifaceted project. This is a summary of what you've heard today. Natural disaster preparedness enables us to redesign design, to better integrate global strategies and response networks with local experience and resources. Think upstream, both in time, learning from the past precedents, and place, re-examine and adapt traditional product supply networks and practices, as well as decentralizing, learning, change from top down to ground up, listen to communities with direct experience and disaster survivors as the experts. Design practice from object-centered to process-centered, process more important than products, and do it yourself. Help others help themselves. Production and distribution, consider regional and local materials, know-how, economies, needs, incorporate practices and objects into everyday situations, and finally, expand definitions and consequences of disasters. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert and Yvette. This was very interesting, and taking this dialogue to the level of students, research, and thinking big and globally about how we what we can learn and how we can develop this learning and spread it. But now, this our third speaker, Arnhildur Pálmadóttir, architect, founder and owner of SAP Architects, will now tell us about her project, Lava Forming, reimagining how we can utilize lava in the future, combining geological forces and lava flows with the force of architecture. We can now also congratulate her for being, that will be our contribution to the Venice Biennale in architecture, and it's the first time, not totally the first time, but almost the first time that we Icelanders participate in the Biennale. There was one exception, but we're not going to dwell on that. So I'm just going to greet Arnhildur as our first representative. She comes with looking far into the future and reimagining how we do things. So I think, yeah, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a really nice event. Yeah, I'm gonna give you an overview of some of the insights and inspirations for the lava forming project and why we're doing it. And I will do it through video collages that will run in the background. And let's see, yeah, I have to do one more. Iceland is a basalt rock, and that has been shaped by volcanic activity for over 10 million, over 10 millions of years, and this activity has created various formations, mountains, caves, and tunnels, and these drone images are from the last volcanic eruption in Reykjanes. These shots show very well how new lava melts and melts through older layers of lava, and by that form canyons and creates and shapes a totally new landscape. It's an infinite amount of lava that comes up in every eruption, and instead of using this creation of nature, we break and crush basalt to mix it with cement to create structures and buildings that we then place on top of the basalt landscape. And by doing this and using other faulty systems, we humans have become a geological force on multiple levels. We manipulate landscapes and affect weather systems, and this leads us towards a gloomy future. But this is a crisis that can still be averted and remedied. I think architecture can be the force through which we begin to reimagine what the future can be. And Iceland is now facing great challenges as nature, with its rhythmic flow, affects man-made construction, daily life, economy, infrastructure, interfering with our systems, futures, plans, and dreams. So the idea behind our speculative sci-fi project Lava Forming is that architecture can be the force through which we begin to reimagine what the future can be. And that future world is based on the mutual care of people for each other, but it requires architecture that reflects these values. We place ourselves in the future with a project to pull our world today forward to try to solve the problems. And we base, of course, our project on Iceland and its history with volcanic activity. And we go back in time, and it's, of course, also, the project is also inspired by Icelandic innovation and architecture, but at the same time, it's a cross-section of Icelandic history told through geological layers. And it's interesting to look at this footage from Hekla eruption in south of Iceland in 1947. Lava and eruption have been a destructive force through the ages, but as mentioned before, Icelanders have lived in close proximity to it since the settlements. The last series of eruptions in Reykjanes happened 800 years ago. There's a lack of resources for modern type of building materials in Iceland. We don't have many trees. The clay is not suited for brickwork, but we have rocks, and our first buildings were built from basalt, turf, and driftwood fetched in the proximity of where they were built. Humanity is facing challenges of natural disasters, climate change, and faulty systems, as we've seen in the lectures before. It's important to envision a new world and ideas and address this difficult reality. We need to propose new ways of thinking and opportunities to build a future that's within the tolerance of limits of the earth. The turning point of Iceland was when we found a way to turn the disadvantages into advantages. The volcanic activity that had harmed Icelanders since the land was settled was turned into geothermal heating that runs in veins through towns and cities. A project already starting on a large scale during the 1930s. We can now grow food and go swimming in heated pools during wintertime, and we harness glacier rivers and volcanic steam to power electric vehicles in the city, so we are currently living in the sci-fi of the 1900s. We have done it before. But when we are in the middle of the event, it can be difficult to see these opportunities. This is Westman Islands in 1973. At that point, the energy and thought goes into saving yourself and you're saving your valuables. Although these events are regular and rhythmic in Earth's history, they usually happen at intervals of many generations, and even though the scientists can predict and prepare for those events, today we as a society haven't been preparing for them. But Iceland is a land of ice and fire, and there are several places that will be affected by volcanic eruptions in the coming centuries, especially Reykjanes. It is natural that we are focused on the first reaction. Those events come without a warning, are enormous and shocking, but we believe that now is the time to look ahead, use creative and design thinking, and foresee how to react and use what flows out of the earth in large quantities. Up until now, we've used seawater and protective walls to save infrastructure, but this great source of energy and material that comes from the mantle has been almost totally out of human reach. Very few experiments have been done in trying to harness the embedded energy and use of molten lava. In our project, we envision a future where we have found ways to utilize this resource, the material and its embedded energy, to create structures and building using the forces of Earth to create the habits that we so badly need. In Iceland, we are through scientific research and engineering gaining knowledge on a day-to-day basis of how to monitor, predict, and divert the lava flow. We have roads that cross new lava fields in less than a week after it flows. We have lava frequently flowing over paved roads, as we saw in Siggy's lecture. And with perfect access, we have the perfect access to do the first experiments on diverting, even casting from newly erupted lava. We have 1,000 years of experience in the use of how we use water and steam. And our research question that fuels the project revolves around how different properties of lava in different states and composition can have the same properties as mass-produced building materials we know today. So that's the goal of the project. We want to imagine a new world. Lava forming is the next step in technology, the next step in the geothermal era, where not only water or steam is harnessed, but also the benefits of a molten material. It's a project looking into if the next step in industry and production can be in greater harmony with the forces that Earth already provides. Molten rock has the potential to be a transformative material, a monomaterial, and it's all embedded in the magma. So in the project, we place ourselves in the future around 2150, when Reykjanes fires have been ongoing for around 100 years. Lava forming is the architecture of a technologically advanced society that has abundant profit maximization and is therefore free to explore solutions to the building material crisis of the world. We will use lava flow prediction models from the scientists, connecting it to our 3D visualizing models design, and hopefully create structures with different aesthetics than that we see today, because we are inspired by nature that actually creates one of the most beautiful structures already. And basaltic lava flows can contain enough building materials for the foundation of an entire city that would rise in a few weeks. The lava forming project is a story of a world that has recognized the traditional building materials such as concrete and steel that embody huge amounts of carbon dioxide are no longer usable to build the cities that are needed. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Arnaldur. Now we have had all our speakers, and we were gonna, I think actually we're good on time as well. I've been keeping very good track of time, like I was ordered to do, but it was a very effortless work for me. But we are gonna change over to a panel here, so I would ask you to sit there. And we're going to move from here. I'm going to take this one, and then we're going to have a bit of a dialogue about what we've been all hearing here. Yeah, so very nice talks all together, a lot of ideas and thoughts. And I was really hoping we could start sort of a conversation here. And I'm gonna maybe allow some questions, and if I do, you need to be sharp and not talk very long, because often questions are not questions, they're often just comments. But I just want to start with you, Siggy, and the others, because I'm gonna throw questions at you that I would like you all to answer and talk about. So I was thinking, how can we use the experiences that the Blue Lagoon is getting now? Can we use it on a bigger scale, and can we sort of think how we can? Because I think it's interesting how Robert and Yvette are talking about how we can sort of spread things widely. So a very simple little question to you, Siggy, about that.
Obviously.
Okay.
You want a longer answer?
Yeah, it would be great. Otherwise, I have
think
to
I was
speak
telling everything to be short. So, no, I mean, I think what is important, and we have been learning, is that you cannot plan everything in a way. So, okay, we can plan because we need to have this kind of a structure. We need to have the building that they will resist earthquakes. We have to have buses because we need to evacuate and all that. So when I say don't plan, it's not, you obviously plan. But it's mainly have a flexibility in the plan and be adapting to it, because we never know, for example, when things will happen. Obviously, when we have been developing the Blue Lagoon, we knew that there might be eruptions sooner or later. It's an area there are unknown eruptions, and it can happen. So I think I mean, to the point that you were mentioning, and Robert Evert were talking about, it's like the bigger scale, we are going into a problematic areas. We know that. So maybe we should plan that or have an intention of how you want to deal with it. Have it ready. I mean, if we would, for example, have had, now I'm not talking about the company level, but at like a state level, more ideas of how structures should be built, or, I mean, you saw we were very careful about not damaging moss through our work. But you saw in the images that obviously when you're making a protective wall and there is urgency, moss is really insignificant in that terms. So I think, for example, on that point of view, if you have an intention of saying there are going to come disasters, let's have some intention about how we solve them. Let's talk about it before, so we have some kind of a plans up and ready, and we can then implement them much more faster and in better coordination with the local situation. I think what we have learned there is that if we would have been better involved from the beginning, and there would have been a little bit more of pre-thought actions, things have been, we could have probably protected everything and done it just as well with less damages.
Yeah, and then you're referring also to the walls that were built around this area, which for many people in Iceland sounded a bit crazy to begin with, but they have proven to be useful.
Absolutely. I mean, they have protected a big chunk of Grindavik, and they're definitely useful, and they are for deflecting. But let's say I think they could easily have been done slightly differently if there would have been a more thinking maybe beforehand.
Yeah.
I think basically the learning is we should think a little bit more about what's ahead of us.
Well, the interesting point that you raised, Siggy, is just thinking about the scale of the infrastructure, and that you were projecting, looking forward in time, the scale of operation. These are large infrastructural projects, so building a wall that might seem unusual or unfamiliar to the local community on one level. Well, in Venice, they had to build large infrastructure to address the catastrophes that they're facing on a regular scale. And we, in our neck of the woods in New York, absolutely were considering similar kinds of infrastructures. So these are big projects. We have to think big. And what I'm curious about is how, on the one hand, when the minister very smartly recognized, this has an economic question of viability and significance for the nation, let alone the local community and the jobs involved that you were pointing out, Siggy. At the same time, there's a local community that may not have access to the luxury level of Blue Lagoon that's experienced by tourists, for example. So how do you knit together the expectations and concerns of those different communities for the well-being and sustaining the nation, as well as sustainable practices from a design?
Well, I think there's no simple answer to that. I mean, for example, I've been obviously trying to be on the upbeat and saying we have still managed to go through it and it's not finished. But for example, the town of Grindavik is never going to become the same. There were 4,200 people living there, which may sound very little, but it's a little bit more than 10% of the Icelandic population. So it's not that little in the scale. That town was in the middle of the cracking area, and that town will have to be rethought completely. 150 of our staff comes from there, and it has been really difficult also just from psychological aspects and sociology aspect, where are the kids going to train, it's going to be a football club, where are the schools, I mean, it's complicated. And we get a feeling that yes, the state is helping it, but it's like the dialogue could sometimes be better, also beforehand. And I think that's maybe because you were pointing out before, most of the people that get in disasters, they maybe know more, and we should maybe listen to them a little bit more. And it was quite evident when you talked with locals that they knew there were cracks there, and they knew that they played when they were young, but somehow the authorities had allowed building on areas that maybe we were not so wise to build on. So did that because I don't think nobody wanted to be evil. It's just that they didn't maybe talk with the locals about where are those areas. You know, it's just very often a question about having the information and actually asking for them and exploring that.
Which brings us a bit to the time scale of things, because I think what you say is exactly that we realized in Reykjavik even and in other areas that we have been, maybe because we have different municipalities and they are merging and people are choosing to build on not so good places instead of thinking about this because the people knowing about, they're not there now, you know, because we forget in 100 years what happened or something like that. But yeah, Yvette.
I also wonder, right, like you have the benefit of slowing down the lava, of creating an obstacle for it. What are the consequences that you did not think about? For example, were there any animals that needed to cross which are now being stopped? They need to go somewhere else. Were there no animals that needed to do that? Are there any
Iceland
humans?
is not very rich in animals.
Yeah, but what is it, right?
Mostly plants.
Mostly plants, okay.
Plants.
Yeah.
Plants.
But I think it's also a little bit what I mentioned. You talk about the generations, because we have it's 800 years since we had this last time, so no one remembers, and so we start from scratch somehow. And well, Snorri Sturluson would have remembered if he. But I think we have to do more backcasting, or like be patient. We have to kind of. That's why I propose we go to the future and situate us there, because we have been in the response. And now I think we need to be there to imagine how will that be? I mean, in times of climate change, what will the environment be? What will have changed? The moss will probably grow faster because we have more moisture. And so I think we need to do that backcasting, to look back, to try to absolutely stop just being in the response, but thinking about all these, the animals, the people of Grindavik, everything that's affecting this.
What you're describing is the process of prudence. You look back to look forward to know how to act in the present. And it's an extremely important lesson from design. And that image of prudence for thousands of years has been built around fabrication techniques, things we make, measure twice, cut once, as our students learn very quickly with using a table saw. It sounds very common sense and practical, and yet at the same time, it's fundamental, and you forget that very simple default approach. And a curious thing that we learned from our friend Hirokazu Nagata, and we learned after the Fukushima disaster in Japan, was that hundreds of years ago, fishermen and settlers had located these stones along the beach of where you should not be and where you should not build based on their accumulated experience of tsunamis. And yet, for financial reasons, the same kind of thing of building on the cracks, humans, we have hubris, we can outwit nature, we can big infrastructure this problem away, and we'll build wherever we want. Suddenly we have problems with nuclear reactors and floods of exactly where we were told by people hundreds of years ago not to be.
Everyone forgot why the stones were there, I guess.
Exactly.
And
that was design that was just fell out of shared memory.
I think Alejandro Arnavera, I think you mentioned him, the architect, he also did tsunami protection areas in Chile, and because tsunamis come every 8 years or every 20 years, so the design was for the people. But the design, so it's about designing for the people and not only having both the belt and the I think the first response can be that, but then we have to kind of broaden the horizon. And
I just want to go a little bit back to the point that Robert was touching on. I mean, I think we humans, we just somehow, because we live in big cities, and it's very easy when you stay in New York to forget completely that there's a nature out there. And we are so used to that the man is above nature in a way, and we do things and we are used to be able to command it. And therefore we don't remember the past, we don't think about it because we are just in the present. But in the end, I mean, okay, you're maybe not having earthquake, okay, you're not having eruptions, but climate change is definitely impacting on it. And I think, I mean, like you were saying, okay, we're not going to solve it today exactly, but I think if we don't think at least out of the box for the future, we are not going to be, solving anything of the problems.
Yeah, you're doing this very well. Thank you. So I had one question for you, Yvette and Robert, about, because you're doing, or maybe two, it's you're working with students on these programs, and you were talking about the United Nations. You presented it. I mean, is there will this has some of this been done? Is it planned to use concrete projects that you've been doing? Both that and then the interest of the students. How is it in Parsons? Is there great interest for these programs?
Well, I can speak about the second part and link it to the first, and perhaps you can think about Abdel or some of the other students who their own interest. One thought is that the students, Parsons happens to be one of the most international universities in the United States. About 70% of our students come from around the world. And what was really stunning in the experience of running these intensives was, and it was also tragic to an extent, the extent to how many of our students had already experienced disasters. They were already experts to a certain extent, either from their own direct experience or indirect experience of family members, friends, others that they know in different parts of the world who experience flooding, volcanoes, earthquakes, tsunamis, the whole range from all over the world. So in a way, that's, again, part of the reason, the lesson we take away is the need to decentralize the assumption that designers know everything or that scientists know everything. And also the established hierarchies that established professors know everything or ministers know everything, right? That younger participants in these conversations know a lot as well, not just average citizens. So it changes the hierarchy of the conversation and the assumptions we make about expertise, knowledge, and sharing that knowledge. And for specific projects, perhaps, Yvette, you can speak to some of the students.
Thank you, Robert. And you mentioned two people, which I think I can talk about. One is Abed Abdul Ghani. He was a student who came with a vast knowledge of precisely how the United Nations works with throwing out, all the resources to helping in disasters. And he was from Lebanon, so he worked with the Syrian refugee camps. And he was involved in the whole United Nations, getting the materials there, laying it all out, having people going in and out. And he had this knowledge, but what he focused on, which was very interesting, was how to give dignity back to the person. So yes, there were all these materials, there was all this stuff, but he was interested in how do you retain that human side of the people who were, because of disasters, because of wars and all this, ended up in that situation, and how they were being treated as the same. They were all exactly the same. They got the same amount of material, they had the same space, but there were families, there were children. So from very early in the program, he started working with different ways of giving dignity back. So that was really interesting, because now he's working with the United Nations still in Lebanon with the Syrian refugees, and he is applying everything that he experimented with at Parsons. He worked with water, he worked with children and how they could play. He worked, his final project was a beautiful vase for a candle holder that had certain inscriptions that gave that humanity back to whoever was using it. And another student I can think about is Noah Labinaz. He took the class, he was in the program of industrial design, and he took the class, and he ended up doing a thesis project, creating a methodology of how to work with the United Nations and the Red Cross, and how to create plans that could be adapted to local situations. So he had the big plan, but he was creating this methodology that could be applied to very specific situations. And it was very interesting, and it included a lot of what we talked about today, using behavior as the learning power behind what we do, existing behavior, everyday, how people act together and in different situations. So I think there are various possibilities there.
One point I would add to Helle, if I could, is that our students, we at the university at Parsons, were part of the New School, and there's also the Zolberg Center of Human Migration and Mobility, and that organization within, and they've collaborated with us, and we've jointly run some classes and exercises. That center has really looked at disaster in, again, as Yvette was saying in her presentation, broadening the scope. You know, not only there's natural disasters, but there's the human complications of these disasters, and that warfare complicates it. At any point in time, we have 250 million, at least, humans migrating away from their point of origin and away from home. And so personalizing, humanizing that experience of being without shelter, without familiarity, without community is an enormous challenge and an opportunity for design to step in, not to just design the stuff that they need, but to equip them to prepare and help themselves. That's part of the restoration, is not being a victim who's given the tools to solve all the problems. That usually makes things worse. But actually to fortify and strengthen the capacity to address their own issues through design in a more DIY way that we've learned from our students and collaborators.
It's very interesting because I like this idea of design being design of systems and intelligence and combining it, because I think designers are often not used as much as they should be to kind of be part of this system design, and it's often scientists, but I think it needs to be interdisciplinary, and sometimes we can connect the dots with the design thinking. That's very important and connects to everything that you're saying, of course.
Well, there is one thing, aspect of design, like you're saying, which is often undervalued, is design is kind of ability to change classes. So we look at problems with different classes, and unfortunately, design is always recognized as being aesthetic because it's easy to take a photo of an object, of a thing, or a solution. But to get to that object, often there is a passage of all kinds of reflection on from different aspects. Can be production, can be behavior, can be use, can be post-use, can be what kind of symbolism is there, and so on and so forth. And I think the leverage of design in, like you say, interdisciplinary, it's almost like an enzyme that accelerates collaboration, etc., is something that's totally underutilized.
Yeah, I think, I was gonna throw sorry, a question for you, Arnhildur. But it's a bit of a practical question to a speculative project. So, because we need to imagine how this can be possible. Would you, of course, we can imagine that people thought things that we have now are, So, a very vague question here, but can you elaborate a bit on that? Like, how
am I going to do it?
Yes, how are you going to do it? I know it's, there's no simple question there.
No, I mean, if you think about it as an idea, I think it will give us the answer when we start imagining the world. But of course, we could. The goal is not to make a product. The goal is not to do something physical in a way. It's more to kind of lure us all into this future and see if we can work with. What we want to. One thing we want to do is we want to connect the lava flow models of the scientists that are calculating and predicting for Siggy where he's not parking his car and things like that. So we will use that to kind of we will connect it to our 3D modeling designs, and so we will actually make the possibility for nature to create, maybe through even 3D printing or through something with the flow prediction models, an output. And we hope, because lava is such an organic material in how it kind of piles up, that it will give us another aesthetic. It will give us more Sagrada Familia than square boxes that we have today for buildings. So this connection of intelligence is nature's intelligence, some AI with 3D modeling softwares, and then an output, human output. We hope that's the one thing that we want to do.
Because there is a point to this. I mean, in this last 9 months, the scientists have been learning a lot about, because every volcano is different. Every has like we have our fingerprints. That every volcano has their fingerprint, which is different chemicals and so on. And just even though the eruption seems to be very, very similar, sometimes they come a little bit deeper and so on, and the magma behaves very differently, it flows very differently, and it kind of accumulates very differently. And what they have been learning very fast now is actually this information, and that's probably what you are going to be using and leveraging. And I think that's just, it is a learning phase, I mean, which is very important. And the question you asked was difficult for her to answer, but just think about Star Trek. I mean, so many things we are using today is just because of someone dreamed it up in a Star Trek something in the 60s, no?
Yeah, I mean,
so
the sci-fi.
if you don't dream about it, nobody is going to think, I need to develop the material to do it.
The geothermal energy was sci-fi in the 1900s, early 1900s, so yeah.
Yeah.
It's a work in
No,
progress.
I was just thinking, the curious thing is the vehicle, of course, in Star Trek was Enterprise, right? And so the idea of entrepreneur, of undertaking, of taking on challenges around making, that's really the enterprise that's involved. But in the case of the thumbprint of being unique, first I was wondering if, okay, instead of having concrete factories, which is part of the huge carbon problem and what we're trying to shift from in architecture and construction of cities, and we have so many cities being built simultaneously around the world using that older technique and problematic approach. How if suddenly we recognize that the volcanoes are the factories that are actually producing materials, approach that differently? Now you'd have to tune that, knowing the thumbprint approach is each one is its own special approach. So it's not just a blanket you can throw over it and do all the same way. It's not necessarily universal. It still follows this need to tune into the local and regional conditions and communities and learn from that.
Yeah, this is actually our project. So yeah, we are looking into that because basalt has, of course, also materials like iron, copper. Like Siggy says, it's different between where it's coming up from. But so it becomes a monomaterial. You can actually pull out the reinforcement bars with iron running with another melting point than the stones, and so it's
other metals, etc.
Yeah.
And we were talking about this a little bit before the event. You know, you had the Romans had pozzuolo, which was tufa, very soft material, but very different from basaltic. So it's like each thumbprint, each local condition is an opportunity to approach the materiality of that region differently in the industries.
That's why it's a global project, not only Icelandic project, because it can be adapted in other.
I think this is very interesting dialogue. And I had one question more, but I think we have come to the end, so we can talk about that maybe together, everybody here. I thought the point of plan versus design intentions is a really interesting point that we should, I guess, I'm not going to start that now because then we will talk for half an hour more, but we have some time now to have a drink, and so I want to just end it now. I'm not going to allow you to ask any questions, but nobody raised a hand, and you were all very polite. So I think you can just approach the people here on the bench. I want to thank all of you very much for being here. That and Siggi, Altendur, and Robert. It's been a great moment we've had here, and I want to thank the Scandinavian institution here for hosting us, and all the people who have been helping us making this a really nice experience here. There are some, thanking the Blue Lagoon for participating here with us. And,